It's almost like when I walk into the room, I try to say hi to Phoebe. And then Phoebe's like, maybe she was busy on her phone. So then I'm going to start thinking that she hates me. She doesn't like me, you know? And when I think that way, I'm not going to feel comfortable around her. And when she tries to talk to me, I will try to stay away from her. And then she will feel like something is off between us, and then she talks to me less. And then I'm going to start thinking, see? And our relationship grew more and there's a distance between us now.
Assumption.
Yes. And that's what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy, where something that's not true, but now it's becoming true because of the process that I allow myself to go through.
Hi, my name is JC. I'm a university student. Okay. So I guess because I'm also currently in this mental health issues so I was a very competitive person. Before last year something happened so I changed as I slowly neutralizing this feeling, because I know one is not healthy. Two, I feel like God is asking me to slow it down. But then, because now I'm in a phase of juggling around, living in a place of expectations, lecturers, supervisors, peers.
Yes.
They would like to set a lot of expectations on you. And then I'm trying to really want to feel like shaking it off. But the situation really forces me otherwise. They ask me to follow because they say this is correct. They expect you to be a good student with this and that. So is there any particular tips or ways to let me stay on what I feel really it's correct, as in a correct perspective, and learn to filter from those expectations? And then because you mentioned about emotions, right? So I'm also in the sense of sometimes I don't know, should I keep it in myself and just go home and cry at home? Or until at some point I cannot hold it, I want to cry it out. So is holding emotions until letting it out in a silent place healthier? Or is it in any extent I really want to burst it out? Is it better to let it loose in front of my friends or anyone if I cannot tahan already? So yeah, that's my question to you.
Okay.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah. First,
there's a lot of questions. And thank you for being so honest as well.
First thing first, I want to thank you for your trust for this space, and for your honesty too. And I just want you to know that I'm sorry that, you have to go through these struggles, these challenges. And it is a tough situation. Yeah. So allow me to just break this down into a few different parts for you. Yeah. One thing I would say is that few things that came to my mind. One is on, boundaries. Recognizing the boundaries. So people can lay expectation on me. But I also play a part to set that boundaries with people. So I think it's important also for me to evaluate the situations. What if these expectations are valid, reasonable, rational? If these expectations are valid, reasonable, and rational, but I'm still struggling, then perhaps I might want to look into how can I help myself to expand my capacity? How can I help myself to expand my capacity? Or how can I help myself to be able to tolerate these distresses better? So these are, or is there any other factors or issues or, matters that are draining my resources that perhaps I'll need to cut down? So these are some of the things that I can look into. So one is to decrease my output. The other one is to increase my input. That is me getting social support. That is me taking care of my physical health. That is me going for therapy. That is me increasing my capacity and my input. So I would say these are some of the things that came to mind. So, and you asked about, whether it is better to cry it out in front of your friend or to cry it out in silence. I would say there's no right or wrong answer. If you need, if at that moment you felt like, it's really overwhelming, it's okay to cry on your own too. And if you feel like this group of people, these friends of yours, they are people who can be trusted. They are people who are truly there for you. They are people who truly care for you. They are people who love you. It takes courage to be vulnerable. It takes courage to be vulnerable, but oftentimes meaningful relationships are formed in vulnerabilities, in these vulnerable moments. So I'm not sure who your friends are, but I think you know them better than I do. Yeah, so I think these are some of the tips that came to me. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, JC.
Okay.
All right. And another question for you, Thomas, also is, which is actually a very popular question, is how do I deal with burnout?
Wow. Yes. I would say actually I've indirectly answered that question by answering Jesse's question. So I would want to first be curious about what's leading me to experiencing this burnout. Is it because I'm in an environment that doesn't respect my boundaries? Even, with me trying to stand firm to reiterate my boundaries, but this environment is still not respecting my boundaries. So is there anything that can be done here? Is it an option for me to leave this environment? So I would say I want to first evaluate what is leading me to experiencing this burnout. And so I would say a more typical tips or suggestion is the few that I've shared with Jesse is increasing my capacity. Okay, maybe I'll break it down into 5 different aspects. One is the physical aspect. The other is the emotional aspect. And then we have the mental aspect. And then we have the relational aspect. And then we have the spiritual aspect. So with these 5, it is almost like a holistic well-being. So these are the 5 areas that I can evaluate. How am I doing in these 5 areas? How's my physical health now? How's my sleep? How's my diet? How's my exercise? Is there anything that can be done here? And when it comes to emotion, how's my emotional well-being lately? Is there anything that can be done here? Do I need to process this more on my own with my friends, or do I need professional help? So mental as well. So mental, am I able to focus? What are some of the core beliefs that are helpful, not helpful? Relational. How's my social support? How's the support system? Do I have any support system? Or is there any toxic relationship or unhelpful relationship that's also contributing to this that I may need to walk away from? Because walking away from a toxic relationship, it takes tremendous amount of courage too. And sometimes, with relationships that we are not able to walk away from, we want to learn to set boundaries. Set boundaries where, you can say whatever you want to me, but I'm imagining in front of me there's a transparent glass or pot. You can say whatever you want, but it's not getting to me. Because I know so I am drawing the boundaries between your emotions and my emotions. These are reactions from your emotions. I don't want to bear your emotions. I don't want to bear the effect of your reaction from your emotion on me. So that's me drawing that boundary too. But is it easy? It's not easy. It takes practices too. And I would say that's the mental, emotional, relational. The last part is spiritual. Spiritual, where it goes to prayer, worship, the word of God, and that. So I would say these 5 different aspects that we can look into to evaluate my resources or what might be draining my resources that I want to cut down. And the stress tolerance, because in our generation nowadays, this stress tolerance is really lacking. Because, even if I go to the toilet, I need to look at my phone. I can't even stand the boredom. imagine all the challenges, struggles from the difficulties in life. It's going to be tougher than the boredom as you're sitting in the toilet, on the toilet bowl. Kan? So I would say distress tolerance is something that I want to look into as well. So, I remember we were discussing about this, how do we expand the distress tolerance? And it can be as simple or as interesting as starting your day with a cold shower. Who enjoys cold shower here? Can I see your hand? Who enjoys cold shower? Okay,
wow.
There are a few of you.
Amazing.
Okay, there are a few of you. Great. Yeah.
Amazing.
If I were to be very honest with you, I hate cold shower.
Me too. I love my warm shower.
So, for people who hate cold shower, by taking cold shower or by forcing yourself to stay in that cold shower, that is actually training your distress tolerance. And from another research, it actually shows that by going for endurance training, that also helps you to expand.
Like a marathon?
It can be a marathon, or it can be like CrossFit, or HIIT, that kind of workout where it challenges, where you feel very uncomfortable. It's like, you are struggling, but you're still pushing yourself. Right. You are expanding the capacity to tolerate distress. And an interesting research actually shows that people from traumatic upbringing or who've experienced traumatic events or incidences, they tend to get into endurance training more. Somehow there is
gym all your sadness away.
Yeah, it shows
that's why you say everyone who break up after that, right? They all become hot after that. Gym all your sadness away.
I want to make him regret. But there is a significant, I would say, correlation between that, and I think it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense because it trains me to sit through the discomfort.
So all the personal bests, the PRs, are all achieved through heartbreaks, all the friendship.
I'm not sure if that answers the question or not for burnout. And it's okay to take a break. I would say it's always okay to take a break. It's always okay to take a break, although sometimes our surrounding or environment might make us feel like it's not okay to take a break.
Wow. And another question I have is, how you're going to use the words like depression and anxiety here, and we do not want to discount people who are actually going through clinical depression. But at the same time, the word depression is actually thrown around very loosely, especially in our day and age. We go through things and we can go on Twitter and be like, I'm depressed. So what's the difference between feeling down and being actually clinically depressed?
Okay. I would say that, I believe all of us have gone through depressive state. We have felt, I believe that all of us here, we've experienced, we have felt depressed before. But me feeling depressed is different from me having a clinical depression. Because in order, I would say, to term it as clinical depression, I will need to go and get an assessment and diagnosis from a professional. So you will need to go through that diagnosis in order for you to say that, I am clinically depressed, or I have MD, I have a major depressive disorder, or whatnot. So I think that there is a difference, There is a difference. So I think it's common. It's very common for us to for people to go through depressive states, especially when things are not working out for us. But it's different from me having being clinically depressed, I would say. So, and the danger of that is because oftentimes nowadays when you watch reels, you're going to see people sharing that, I have depression and these are my symptoms. Or, I have ADHD, these are my symptoms. So when we scroll through reels like that, a lot of us tend to just try relate, try to find some relevance. Oh, I have this, I have that, I have this, I have that.
And the algorithm
yes.
it up.
The more you watch videos like that, reels like that, the more they are going to promote these reels to you, and the more you're going to feel I have this, I have that. So you are going to tell people I have ADHD, I have this, I have depression, I have, I'm on the spectrum. And then you're going to, it's almost like a make-believe where you are going to live your routine around something like that. People are going to ask you hey, Phoebe, come, let's go for badminton. no, I don't feel like going. Today is like, I'm feeling very depressed. It's, I'm low on energy, low motivation, this and all. I don't feel like doing it. Then eventually, maybe initially you memang don't have depression. You are not clinically depressed. But somehow because you have self-diagnosed yourself to have that, and it becomes a make-believe where, you start living like that. That at the end of the day, you go for assessment and diagnosis, you are clinically depressed. And then what are you going to tell yourself? I knew it. And then maybe you will self-diagnose yourself for the next label again, the next label again, or the next label again. So I think it's very dangerous to self-diagnose. So if you feel like you're struggling with certain, say that symptoms or maybe even like disorders or whatnot, go and get a professional assessment. Go and get a professional assessment. Don't ask your friend around you too. Do you think I have this? Do you think I have that? Okay, if you have smart, wise, mature friend, then that's great. But if your friends are like, oh, you're struggling with this, I think you have depression, then say, Lord, that one I definitely. Okay, so I would say there's a danger in doing that lah. There's a danger in doing that.
Like there's a danger in actually making or even using like a suffering and like using it and making it become your identity, right? That's what I'm catching.
Yeah.
Where like you allow that emotion to define who you are. And
in a way, it's like you are trying to fit yourself into something that you are not. And somehow then you become that person. So I think there is a danger in that. So there is a term where we call it like the self-fulfilling prophecy. So a self-fulfilling prophecy is an example where...
canon event. All the TikTokers.
So it's almost like when I walk into the room, I try to say hi to Phoebe. And then Phoebe's like, maybe she was busy on her phone. So then I'm going to start thinking that she hates me. She doesn't like me, And when I think that way, I'm not going to feel comfortable around her. And when she tries to talk to me, I will try to stay away from her. And then she will feel like something is off between us, and then she talks to me less. And then I'm going to start thinking, see? And our relationship grew more and there's a distance between us now.
An assumption.
Yes. And that's what we call a self-fulfilling prophecy, where something that's not true, but now it's becoming true because of the process that I allow myself to go through. Or I put myself into, I would say. So I think self-diagnosis, there is a danger of that happening too.
Wow. And emotional regulation is very important also. Emotional awareness and identifying it and knowing how to process it so that it doesn't become like that, a canon event.
That is a very, very important skill, but it is also like not something that our culture is used to practicing. So we want to acknowledge that too.
That's so good. Okay, wow, there are actually a lot of questions. There's so many questions. Okay, I think that one thing that I actually saw was, hold on, let me go and find the question. Okay, what do I do when I start overthinking?
What do I do when I start overthinking? I would say there are a few different techniques. Yeah, so I'm not a few, but there are many different techniques out there. So some might work for you, some may not work for you. Yeah, so some of the techniques that I can think of right now is, one is journaling. But one thing is, what are you overthinking about? Are you worrying about what's going to happen in the future, or are you ruminating on something that's happened in the past? So what are you overthinking about? So whether it's like, anxiety, guilt, or what's happening here, what's driving that overthinking behaviors or thought process. So because understanding that might help me tackle that issue more effectively. So if say that, I'm ruminating on something that's happened in the past, say a heartbreak or whatsoever, so I may need to work on that process of grieving. Or maybe that loss, or maybe, just allowing myself to process through these emotions. Or maybe if I'm feeling like, if I'm overthinking about my future, what's going to happen, then that sounds more like anxiety to me. So then the technique may be different. So I may want to start a list of worries. I'm going to write down all my worries, and I'm going to I can even see, okay, out of all these worries, what are in my control, what are not. And I can even arrange their priority, what's more important, what's less important, and their level of difficulty, which one is easier, which one is tougher. And so then from there I can pick, okay, which one do I want to work on? Because one thing that we realize is with anxiety, the moment you start doing something, the anxiety the anxiety calms down. The moment you start to do something. But the thing about anxiety is that oftentimes it cripples you to act. Because you are just sitting there, you are just worrying, you are just constantly thinking. So you are doing a lot by not doing anything. Because everything is happening here. At the end of the day, nothing's done. And I still have all of this on my list. And that's going to make you feel even more anxious, more stressed. You're going to overthink more. You're going to worry more. So the thing about like overthinking is perhaps start doing something might be helpful. But me saying this might be overgeneralizing, the technique. Because it can be journaling. It can be like breathing technique. It can be grounding. It can be like say that for social anxiety. When I walk into this room, I'm starting to like think like that person is looking at me. He must be thinking this about me. That is happening. This is happening and all. So I know all these irrational thoughts, they are running through my head. So what's going to help me in that moment is perhaps breathing and grounding. Take a few deep breaths, Thomas. It's okay. Check out the surrounding. Okay, what are interesting in the surrounding? Oh, okay, I see that light. Okay, I'm going to describe that light to myself. Oh, that light looks like this, and that chair looks like this, and all. So what do I hear in this space? So me grounding is me distracting my senses to what is in the present, rather than me spending time in this head space of mine.
It can get very crowded.
Yes. So that is grounding where I bring myself to the present moment. So that usually happens through the five senses that I have. I can be touching and just determine, okay, how am I feeling like this pen? So, okay, this pen feels like this pen feels like that. Or getting a cold drink, or holding to like I would say ice. This I would say like by stimulating myself in this manner, like these senses, it can also help myself to connect with the present moment better. These are some of the grounding techniques. Right. Yeah.
Talking about heartbreak and dealing with loss, let's say friendship breakups, it can even be like maybe losing, going through a breakup. How do we navigate through grief, or perhaps even losing a family member, a loved one? How do we deal with letting go and dealing with the hurt and the grief?
Okay.
It was a question I thought, like, when you talked about, ruminating on the past.
The thing about grief is that grief is still a very complex topic. Like I would say it's an area where it's, I would say if not many studies have been done on grief because it's too complex. In the beginning, like I would say in the earlier years, people would say that, grief, grief should only take 2 years, 3 years max. If you are grieving more than 2 to 3 years, something's wrong with you. You are not going through the process of grieving properly. But somehow now people are saying that actually there's no time limit to grieving. Some people may need to grieve for the rest of their life. Some people may be able to go through the process of grieving and finally reach that stage of acceptance that, this has happened. This person is gone now, but now this person holds a different emotional role, position, value in my life, and I can accept that. But some people, they just are not able to. So I think when it comes to grief, the thing is, I'm not sure how true is this, because it's not proven, and there's no, I would say there is a lack of empirical evidence on grief. But one thing that, I've heard this author, therapist, and he does a lot of hospice care services. So he deals with a lot of losses, a lot of grievances. And one thing he said that really struck me was that actually when it comes to grief, it is less about the grief, it is more about the allowance. What about the allowance is I'm going to allow myself to grieve, or I am going to allow myself to not grieve, depending on the capacity that I have. Because sometimes we might be we might be focusing too much on you should grieve. You should go through that process of grieving. You should be going through this. You should sit with this. You should be like doing this, doing that, doing this, doing that. But sometimes you really don't have the capacity to go through that. So you want to allow yourself, or maybe as a good friend of yours, I want to also help you to know that, it's okay if you are not ready to grieve now. We want to allow you to have that space, to allow yourself to not grieve, and that's okay. Take your time. But at the same time, I also want to invite this person to have that intention to help themselves through these moments. So I'm not sure if that answers the question. But I would say that grief is really a tricky topic. Grief is really a tricky topic, but what's really important is to have that support system. That is really important. To have that support system, whether it is someone, maybe you are a person who's lost someone important to you, or maybe you are a person who is dying. So it doesn't matter which end I'm on. I would say it's important for me to have that support system. And oftentimes, they found out that people who struggle more, are not the people who are dying, but the people, the relatives, the loved ones, the close ones, they are actually struggling more. Because even after you've left this world, I'm still bearing the pain, the suffering, the hurt and all that. So I would say the support system is really important. And also that kindness and gentleness to myself that, I'm struggling. And it's okay if I don't feel ready to grieve now. But I will come back to this when I'm ready. I'm not sure how long this is going to take, but I'm going to allow myself that time and that space. And is that easy to do? No, it is not. It is not.
I think kindness and gentleness is very important. Especially, I think sometimes when we go through grief, it's not just about dealing with the loss. It could be even like friendships, but it's also dealing with like the hurt. It's dealing with the underlying root of rejection, and dealing with the underlying root of, am I even good enough? What did I do wrong to wrong my friend, for my friend to walk away, or even perhaps like a person that you thought you would want to spend the rest of your life with? And I think that sometimes navigating through that, it's very easy for like the enemy also to just put thoughts in our head that are not necessarily true. But I think one thing that, because I actually have been going for like therapy since last year, because my uni actually offers it like for free. So I'm very grateful for that. And one thing I've learned is that the more you love, the more you grieve. So I think I find that very beautiful. And I realized as well is that for guys, I actually do have a lot of compassion for guys, because I think when they go through like hard times, it's hard to open up with a friend, because usually girls are the ones that are able to be more feeling, and they have their own support system. You can just like talk about your emotions, and like the more you process, like I realized that it's a lot easier. I've heard this somewhere where like it's faster for men to move on, but it takes them longer to process because they don't actually have that support system. Whereas for girls, they feel more, but they move on faster. And I think that like my heart really does go out to guys, because I think that especially being in a culture where like not only like Asian culture where you're supposed to like push everything down and pretend everything is okay with like you have to jaga muka, but on top of that like I think for guys, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like if I share my feelings, it means I'm weak. Whereas for girls, like we feel more fulfillment when we get the most fulfillment when we are heard. Whereas for guys, I think they get the more sense of fulfillment when they have accomplishments, like you achieve milestones, career and things like that. In a general, like not to stereotype everyone, but in a whole as a general. So like when a guy shares their emotions, it either means like when they share their things, it means that they cannot come to a solution on their own. Because usually they will retreat back to like problem solve. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like you problem solve on your own, then only you come out. And only if you cannot problem solve it on your own, then you only come out, that kind of thing. Whereas for girls, like the more we process and we feel hurt, we feel better. Like we don't need to have a solution right away, but as long as we have that space to talk. But I think that like one thing that has really encouraged me is that like I may not know what you are going through right now, but the most beautiful thing is that God knows.
Yes.
And like He knows every single part. He knows every tear you've cried, every struggle, every doubt. And I think that's just something so powerful about it, that like therapy is so important, friendships are so important. But knowing that, believing like every day waking up and being like, the Lord is my strength and my shield. Be strong and courageous wherever I will be with you. Like the peace of my God, my peace will guard your hearts. And knowing that like God is our Jehovah Jireh, I realize that when I speak that over myself on days where I feel sad or like days where I question God, like why do I have things that happen to me? And I'm sure some of you wonder like, why is it that I'm brought up in a family that is has fights all the time? Why is it that I have this illness? Why is it that this person left me? Why is it that my friends rejected me? And I think it's very easy to be afraid to open up your heart. Because we can either like over dramatize it, or we can either like minimize it, and suppress it. But I think that there's just something beautiful, like in hope and faith and realizing that God makes everything beautiful in His time.
Yes, amen, and yeah, I think that deserves like an applause,
But I actually have a question for you. So like, do you have any advice for guys? For example, like going through things alone, or like people who don't really have people that they can talk to. Like, do you have any advice for them? Or even guys, like, how to share emotions and things like that?
Ayo, that one. I myself am struggling. Okay. But maybe I'll take just a step back to piggyback on what you shared earlier. I think it is really wonderful that our God is a God who became flesh. That He really understands what we are going through. He's not just sitting on His throne like, I understand you. But He actually came here. He lived through at 33 years. The temptations, the struggles, the pain, the betrayals, the humiliation. On that cross, one of the most cruelest and painful and humiliating death. Yet He can turn that into something that's so amazing, beautiful, perfect salvation. What more about the brokenness in my family? What more about the brokenness in my life? If He can make that cross wonderful and beautiful, I believe when I commit and surrender this unto Him, in that process too, He can make this beautiful. And so I just want to cast my mind on Him. I think that is the emphasis here. And thank you for sharing that too. So going back to your question, I would say, guys, the thing is sometimes I would say female and male, somehow we are wired differently also. We have to admit that. So when you look at the whole developmental stages or human development, you will see that when we talk about aggression, ladies tend to have this relational aggression where they'll be like, "Oh, you don't friend her. Oh, you see she's like that, she's like that. Oh yeah. Relational aggression. But for guys, we tend to have that, instrumental aggression, where, we shout, we fight, we throw things, or it's more like we have that kind of aggression. So I would say when it comes to relationship building or connecting, you notice the same thing. Girls tend to girls are able to just sit down, just talk about, oh, what did I have for yesterday? And then you can just start talk, you can just connect deep, to that, very deep, pillow talk level,
Pillow talk, yeah.
But for guys, we tend to do things together. We prefer to do things together. Let's go for, camping. Just sit down, have a nice coffee, or, just maybe ramen or something. Yeah. And we don't have to talk so much, but we just feel it's really comfortable here. I feel really supported here. So I think there is that gender, I would say, difference that I want to highlight too. But I'm not sure if this gender difference is because we are wired differently or because how the society and culture have shaped us to be. But I think it's also important for guys to be attuned with our emotions. To be attuned with our emotions. And we want to, I think one thing is that, it is really manly when we are able to be vulnerable.
Wow, say that again.
Can only say once. Can only say once.
I think because we are living in a culture that tells us to man up, to not share, to not be vulnerable, to not be weak. But it takes tremendous amount of courage to say that I'm not okay. But I think this applies to a lot of guys, but I know this applies to a lot of the ladies too. Because a lot of my clients, although they are ladies, but they feel the same way. I cannot cry. I cannot do this. I cannot do that because I don't want to appear as weak. Because in the past, when I appeared, when I tried to reach out, I was hurt. So I have learned to not reveal my weaknesses, to not be vulnerable, and to not trust anyone but myself. So I think, it's almost like it might be a risky play here to trust people to reveal my vulnerability, but I think the risk reward is quite cantik lah. When I'm able to find someone that I can connect with, when I'm able to find that comradeship, then I look back, I'm going to tell myself that, it's all worth it. So my encouragement is keep trying. Keep trying. Don't give up trying. And I believe there are always helpful people around us. But sometimes I think we give up too quickly too. Yeah.
Maybe sometimes we let our fears and our assumptions also get into our head, right? We think this person will leave us again. This person will hurt us again. But I think that there's so much beauty in what you said, to keep on trying. Because I think that really, in a sense, it's really our whole what we've got, right? In a sense, sometimes we ask ourselves, why do these things happen? Why do I get hurt? What's the point of it? But realizing, and actually this was something that my brother shared with me recently, which is he was like, I realized that sometimes the things that we go through is not really so much about the things, but it's about the fact that we are giving God that opportunity to work through us in that. It's never really about, it's never about the degree, it's never about the hardship, but it's about how God can come through in that and what we can learn. I can honestly say that for me, I have grown the most in pain.
Yes.
And even though that's so hard to say, but me, going through, because I think it's very easy when someone hurt us to push them away, it's your fault, cancel culture. But I think that, and it's also very easy to just take on the guilt and be very much it's my fault. Why did I do this? But I think there's that balance in navigating through, okay, this happened. I had a part to play.
Yes.
That person had a part to play. I take the accountability, and at the same time, I forgive the person without having that resentment. And I think it's very tricky to have that balance because, and I really feel it's God, it's the Holy Spirit that brings us through that in navigating through our pain. And I really thank God because I think that without the pain and the suffering that we go through, we would not be where we are today. We would not have the authority to be able to speak into the lives of the people around us, and we would not be able to see how good God is. Because I think ultimately at the end of the day, our lives, it really is about our love story with God. It's as simple as that. When it's not about the heartbreak, the pain, or the loss of a friend, or the conflict with a family member, but it's really about God, you are God and I love you, and I've seen your goodness and your faithfulness in my life, and I cannot deny you.
Yes.
So I think that's just something that I wanted to add on.
Yes, that's beautiful, and I would say going through all of these, the struggles, the pains, the losses, it's still painful. What you're experiencing is still valid. Yeah. But where do I cast my mind on? Do I cast my mind on the situation, the problems, the environment, on my emotion and feelings? Because if I do that, I'm going to find myself just going down the rabbit hole. Or do I cast my mind on the Creator, the wonderful, beautiful Creator who loved me so that, His begotten Son died on the cross for me? When I understand that perfect, wonderful love, yes, I'm struggling, but I still have that peace, gratefulness, and joy in my heart. But I pray that Holy Spirit will work within us to give us that incomprehensible peace. And as you talk about, like recognizing how I contributed to this, how people contributed to this, that's boundary. And when you look at God, when you look at Genesis, when God started creating, He was setting boundaries. Heaven and earth and water. So that's boundary too. So setting boundary is not being unloving. It is being wise. And sometimes setting boundary is me being loving because I am empowering you rather than enabling you. Because when I don't set that boundary, I'm teaching you that you can take advantage of people. You can do this, you can do that. And that is not helping you. It is only enabling you to remain stuck in that situation. So to be loving, I want to love with that godly love and with wisdom too. And yeah, just want to lay that out. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Wow. That was really encouraging and inspiring. And I think that, I'm so sorry. All of you have like so many really, really good questions. And I wish that we could go through all of them. I think we could go through all night. But I think that before we end, I just want to ask you while he takes his sip of water, is there any last words that you'd like to leave with all of us here today? Any encouragement, anything that you'd like to say? And if any of you have any other questions, perhaps they can come and find you later as well. Things, yeah. But
last words. Oh, this is tough. Okay. Maybe I would like to end this with we are living in a fallen world. Yeah. And there are so many things that, can contribute to us feeling pain, to us feeling to us struggling and all that. But in the midst of all of this, I just want to remind us and invite us to never forget to cast our mind on the cross, because we can always find our answer there on the cross. Our pain, our suffering, the one who died on the cross understands completely. And I would say that, yeah, I would like to end with that. Not with mental health, knowledge or wise words or what, but I would say just finding answers on the cross, and I'll leave it as it is. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much, Thomas. Let's give you a round of applause. Thank you. And I hope that everyone has been blessed by today as well. Yeah. And if anyone has any questions afterwards, you can always find Thomas. Or if anyone has anything they want to share with me as well, feel free to just come find me. But if not, thank you so much, Thomas. We'll pass the time back to Pastor Miranda.
Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to Campus Community, where we commune and connect in Christ through Christ-like conversations. If you would like to keep in touch with us, feel free to follow us on our socials at campuscommunity.sibkl. Do keep in touch and see you in our next conversation.